Tobago's economic development has been primarily driven by a combination of efforts by the Tobago House of Assembly and the central government. And whereas in many newly developed cities and countries, the creative class has been identified as a dominant driving force in their economic development. And whereas an emphasis on human capital development over the last 2 decades have resulted in an exponential increase in university graduates, as well as opportunities for vocational skill development. And whereas this Executive Council has accepted as part of its mandate to advance a culture of innovation, creativity, and industry, particularly among the youth on the island, which would in turn significantly contribute to the economic development of Tobago. Be it resolved that this House supports the work of the Executive Council in its attempt to foster a culture of innovation, creativity, and industry on the island, particularly among the youth. And be it further resolved that this House invite the youth of Tobago to embrace the opportunities for development through innovation, creativity, and industry. Madam Presiding Officer, some 2 years ago, when this administration assumed office, we did so against the backdrop that we were devoted and dedicated to the task of improving the quality of education on the island of Tobago, inclusive of vocational training. That we were dedicated to the concept of improving the quality of our health services and healthcare delivery. That our attention was fixed on creating a robust private sector and ensuring that there is such thing as light manufacturing and specialized services on the island of Tobago. To do that, Madam Presiding Officer, this administration would have forged strategically ahead to implement and institute certain bodies and certain task force. To name a few, I remember speaking very early on the motion which spoke to the establishment of the Community Consultative Planning Unit, an organism which would have seen its operation within communities to ensure that persons, all stakeholders, all community groups, and all interested parties would have had an opportunity to inform the strategic developmental agenda of this present administration as it pertains to their particular interests and their needs. Madam Presiding Officer, in like manner, I would have had an opportunity to speak on the motion which sought to create, as it were, the Tobago Community Action Network model, which we loosely call the TCAN model. We would have looked at best practices gleaned from other territories, including the United States, Europe, and other Caribbean territories, Madam Presiding Officer, because we understand, as it were, that the best way to sustainable development for a country, an island, or a people is block by block, community by community. And so, Madam Presiding Officer, having laid the foundation, I feel overwhelmingly honored today to be able to champion a motion which calls for greater youth participation and involvement in respect of innovation, creativity, and industry.
Madam Presiding Officer, the motion that has been tabled by the Assistant Secretary for the Division of Community Development, Enterprise Development, and Labor is quite timely, and it is in the right season. I start my presentation this evening with an excerpt from the manifesto of the People's National Movement for the election year 2017. And I quote from our political leader, the Honorable Kelvin Charles, Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly and Secretary of the Division of Education, Innovation, and Energy. And he said in the manifesto, "On behalf of the Tobago Council of the People's National Movement, I take this opportunity to outline our manifesto for the upcoming elections. I start with a proposition that the best approach to community prosperity and to achieve an enhanced quality of life involves giving to individuals, families, businesses, and community groups the freedom, opportunity, and encouragement to build and secure their own future, end quote. Madam Presiding Officer, every secretary and assistant secretary sitting in this room can tell of the myriad incentives, grants, loans, training programs, and assistance, both past and present, that have been made available and are still available to the citizens of the island of Tobago. All of this in an effort to increase all citizens' way of life, enhance their living conditions, and help them to plan for a better and a secured future. Madam Presiding Officer, as a PNM administration in this space, we continue to work in the interest of the people of Tobago. Though we are constrained by the financial situation of the day, this administration remains committed to servicing all our scholarships, giving grants and loans, introducing incentives, supplying sponsorships, and delivering donations. We are saying again, we will help you to build and secure your future. As a responsible PNM government, Madam Presiding Officer, we understand our responsibility to facilitate development of our human capital, and we will carry on as our founding father has taught us. Therefore, the Tobago House of Assembly continues to be the chief employer, the purchaser of goods and services, and the provider of essential services. The Division of Education, Innovation and Energy builds our schools, refurbishes our institutions of learning, trains our employees, and takes care of the needs of our students and our teachers. All of this, Madam Presiding Officer, as I said, in an effort to make sure that our citizens enjoy the best that the education system can offer. In retrospect, Madam Presiding Officer, this PNM administration has done well. The introduction of GATE has facilitated an increase in the number of students acquiring first degrees, masters, and even doctorates. In 2017, the number of students enrolled in tertiary institutions on the island of Tobago was 1,379, and in 2018, the figure rose to 1,450. Madam Presiding Officer, I can add to that. The number of Tobagonians with degrees that are employed have moved upwards from 5% to 20%, and I can assure you it is a huge, huge increase, 400%. We must also give consideration to our boys and girls, our young people who are studying outside of Trinidad and Tobago. There are many avenues, Madam Presiding Officer, for persons now to develop skills. The Division of Community Development, Enterprise Development and Labor, where my colleague is employed, offers so many classes at our community centers and Y zones. The Division of Education, where I am, we offer training, as I said before, in another presentation in plumbing, masonry, and electrical installation. And there are many vocational skills that are taught, as mentioned at MIC and NESC. This PNM THA knows what it is about. While we continue to provide for our people, we simultaneously say to the small and micro businesses on this island, the aspiring businessman who is listening today, and all of Tobago, to be brave, and let us work at building the private sector so that greater employment can be created.
I wish to begin by recounting some of my experiences as a young person in Tobago with the Tobago House of Assembly, and how that would have aided in my growth and development. And then juxtapose that with many of my colleagues, many of my peers my age, who somehow, it would appear, have missed either those opportunities to develop and grow, or just didn't care. I wish to go all the way back to the late 1990s, when the Department of Youth was located down at Shaw Park. At that time, Madam Presiding Officer, the division was called Community Development, Youth Affairs and Sport, and the line secretary was Mrs. Miriam Caesar Moore, representing the area of the electoral district, rather, of Bethel, that is now being represented by the mover of this motion. And I start there because that was my first major interaction with any youth department or the THA in any direct way. And I could remember the youth department preparing for what was then the island's first youth debate and sitting. And we will leave school and we will walk down to Shaw Park, and we will be all over the offices. We were managing the project almost autonomously with the guidance of folks like Miss Anne-Marie Degazor. And we had a successful debate. And then sometime again in post about 2001, 2002 thereabout, at Bishop's High School we decided to have another debate in the house, this time about HIV and AIDS. And so we went to the youth department, and by this time it was the Division of Education, Youth Affairs and Sport. And the then Chief Secretary, Mr. London, was also the secretary for that division. And we again prepared, we had a debate, we felt like we were on top of the world, we were managing our own affairs, we felt like the youth department was extremely close to us as young people. And so I raise these two examples to say that in reality, executive councils past and present have tried numerous approaches to reach out to our young people in creative ways. But I entered sixth form with 93 persons. And I am doubtful that I can find 20 of that 93 present in Tobago. And I'm doubtful that I can find 50 of that 93 contributing back to the island in some way or the other. And I raise it because while it is great for us to discuss ways of involving our young people, ways of developing the creative sectors so that our young people feel more at home, it means that somewhere along the line we have lost some people. And I dare say we have lost many people. We may not have lost them to bad vices, but we have lost many young people in a way that they are not meaningfully contributing to the island's development as they should. And so the question we must ask ourselves from the get-go is, what else can we do? What more should we be doing? Because if we have all of these wonderful programs and we still have a serious issue with brain drain, and brain drain in our century is not just our young people being absent from the island, but their creative and intelligent and powerful thoughts are not present with us. If that kind of brain drain is still happening, it means that we have to try something or some things differently in order to captivate the imagination of our young people. And that's where we have to start. The motion begins its premise on the fact that the Tobago economy is primarily led by the government, either at this local level, the THA, or the central government. And any economist will tell you that while it is the role of the government to facilitate the economic growth of any space, we really desire stronger private sector development and input. The motion recognizes that around the world, the creative classes, are becoming much more dominant. And the move of the motion referenced the Asians, and I'm happy that it did. But the difference between the Asians and us is not that they are brighter than we are. It's not that they are more creative than we are. In fact, I'll be controversial to say many of the imports we get from Asia sometimes are substandard, low quality. And so it's not that they are more skillful than we are, but it perhaps might be a matter of patriotism. How do we get our people, our young people, where even if the opportunities for them are not available on this island, they can find meaningful ways through our diasporic connections to contribute back to their island?
So let's look at Tobago and let's ask ourselves the question, where are we and what have we done over the years to support innovation, to support creativity? And I want to boast, Madam Presiding Officer, that this administration, this PNM administration over the last 18 years has done significantly well. And we have made significant strides in terms of attempting to position the people of Tobago to be more creative and more innovative. And I want to give you the facts, Madam Presiding Officer, because the facts are that over the last 18 years, we have provided significant opportunities to Tobagonians in terms of facilities. And when we examine the Tobago space, we will recognize that this Tobago situation is far better than that in Trinidad. It's far better than the situation in any other Caribbean island when it comes to the presence of community facilities, Madam Presiding Officer. And of course, this administration must be credited for that. When it comes to human capital development, Madam Presiding Officer, over the last 5 years alone, this administration has trained over 5,000 individuals in vocational skills. And we're talking about innovative areas like natural jewelry making, bread cakes and pastries, Indian delicacies, art and craft, and a number of areas, Madam Presiding Officer, we have provided the training. In terms of tertiary education, it was the People's National Movement that opened the gates. And of course, here in Tobago, the Tobago House of Assembly went a step further by affording Tobagonians the opportunity to get a second bite at the cherry in terms of financial assistance for tertiary education. And therefore, at this point in time, as my colleague previously said, the amount of individuals in Tobago, in the working population with degrees, Madam Presiding Officer, has increased from 5% in 2001 to 20% when we last checked in 2016, Madam Presiding Officer. And again, this administration must be credited for that. Let's talk about entrepreneurship. What have we done, Madam Presiding Officer? And of course, entrepreneurship is a critical part of innovation, because I tend to believe that innovation should be driven mostly by the private sector. Because when you look at the public sector, apart from the previous central government from 2010 to 2015, under the leadership of Kamla Prasad Bisesa, apart from them innovating new ways to be corrupt and new ways to mismanage, the public sector is not necessarily known for being innovative or being creative, Madam Presiding Officer. And of course, that is not a unique thing in Trinidad and Tobago. That is a feature of public sectors across the world, Madam Presiding Officer. As a matter of fact, one of the largest areas of spending in terms of innovation and in terms of new technology in the world has to do with defense spending. Of course, large countries like the United States, like Great Britain, even the Russians, the Chinese, etc., they spend billions of dollars every year on defense. Yeah? Whether it's new drones, new jets, new missiles, new forms of weapons, etc. And of course, that can only be possible with the advancement in technologies spearheaded, Madam Presiding Officer, by the private sector. So the public sector by itself cannot, Madam Presiding Officer, engage in innovation. And therefore, I want to congratulate the Division of Finance and Enterprise Development, not Enterprise Development anymore, Finance and the Economy, of course under the leadership of Secretary Jack, for the amount of funding over the last few years they have spent on giving to Tobagoans grants and in some cases loans to ensure that they put their ideas, their business ideas, their creative ideas into action and into practice, Madam Presiding Officer. And that to me is innovation at work.
Having regard for all that was said by those who would have contributed to this debate, I now consider myself twice as blessed. First, to have been given the opportunity to raise this motion in this House. Secondly, to have had the overwhelming support, not just of my colleagues, but of the member opposite. And I want that to really go down in history. Because whereas our past experiences would have proven that we would have agreed on some areas and disagreed on a vast majority, I can say with certainty today, what the member opposite would have articulated was overwhelming support and would have further punctuated the discussions with sound ideas and with suggestions that we will happily take on board and extend further a hand of fellowship, having heard him use the Christian colloquialism, a hand of fellowship, so that we can establish, as it were, a task force that will derive not just a Tobago charter of a national youth development policy, but a working, applicable implementation framework that will allow for the people of Tobago to derive all of the benefits of which we earlier spoke. And so, member, excite yourself as I am exciting myself.
Honourable members, the question put. Whereas Tobago's economic development has been primarily driven by a combination of efforts by the Tobago House of Assembly and the central government, and whereas in many newly developed cities and countries, the creative class has been identified as a dominant driving force in their economic development, and whereas an emphasis on human capital development over the last 2 decades has resulted in an exponential increase in university graduates, as well as opportunities for vocational skills development, and whereas this Executive Council has accepted as part of its mandate to advance a culture of innovation, creativity, and industry, particularly among the youth on the island, which would in turn significantly contribute to the economic development of Tobago. Be it resolved that this House support the work of the Executive Council in its attempt to foster a culture of innovation, creativity, and industry on the island, particularly among the youth. And be it further resolved that this House invite the youth of Tobago to embrace the opportunities for development through innovation, creativity, and industry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any against? The ayes have it. This motion is now carried.